great day. It really is a great day. Nice out. We won't be able to say that very much. Everything will start with, oh. My name is John Dyer. Great to meet you. Hello, everyone out there in internet world. We're back on the contract. We do not necessarily a section, a piece of the contract every week till we're done. Then we do addendums, and then we do listings, and next time I'm throwing in a clause class, and we start over. We're back to the beginning of the purchase contract. Section 1. My standard stuff, you know, I don't do politically correct very well. This class is based on the premise that you have a fiduciary duty to do perfect paperwork. That problem solving is a skill for losers. You need to practice preemptive, proactive, potentially paranoid problem prevention. You do that through perfect paperwork. So we literally, instead of like a class, you know, CE class where I got to cover the whole contract in 3 hours, we pick the thing apart. As far as I get, that's where we stop. Keep an eye on the time for me, would you, Dwayne? I don't know what time it is. As far as I get, that's where we stop, and we pick up there next time. So you just have the part of the contract we need. Let's start at the beginning. This is the buyer attachment. This is it's kind of a nice little instruction manual, kind of a heads up for your clients. I recommend, especially unsophisticated first-time buyers, that you go ahead and put it, since you're doing digital signatures usually anyway, go ahead and put initial boxes here. It starts with number 1, read the entire contract. If you do DocuSign, DigiSign, eSign, which is damn near a rhetorical question in this day and time, everybody does, make sure you have something up front that reiterates that. A little note that says, make sure you read and understand all documents before clicking, signing, initialing, sending. Call me if you have any questions. And if I put an initial box outside the structure of the contract, that's my way of saying pay special attention to that. And then put initial boxes here. They may not read it, but this is just risk management. You want to be able to stand in front of a judge and go, I did everything I could to get them to educate themselves. I educated as much as I could. And yes, Your Honor, I absolutely believe everything I did was perfect. There's your, not your goal, there's your minimum standard. Anything you do documentary or legal that you literally are so comfortable with how awesome and perfect you did it that you can stand before a judge and you don't even have to defend it. You just go, yeah, it's that good. I challenge you, Your Honor, to find anything wrong with it. Clients need to understand this one sentence here. Attention buyer, and by the way, attention seller. You are entering into a legally binding agreement. We have problems come in waves. And this wave it's been going on about the last 6 months. I've been in this business almost 40 years. I'm in my 40th, and I don't ever remember there being such a common thing where people are quite simply changing their mind and saying, no, I don't want to do it. Why? I just don't want to. Especially sellers. Seller has virtually no back doors in this contract. This contract is very, very much binding on the seller. We have buyers and sellers that they just simply change their mind, and you say you signed a legally binding contract. They go, so what's the big deal? Well, the word legally binding means liability. It is sellers need to understand, especially sellers, that they pretty much have no way out of this thing. And to leave it leaves them extremely legally vulnerable and exposed. We don't necessarily make a big enough deal out of that until someone tries to weasel out. And then the words legally binding become really, really uncomfortable and painful for them. Section 2, number 2, read the seller property disclosure statement. I can't say seller property disclosure statement without getting on my soapbox. Any agent who puts a property on the market without a seller property disclosure statement, unless it's an REO, probate, or bankruptcy, is breaching their fiduciary and stabbing their seller in the back. It's inexcusable. It should never happen. Seller property disclosure statement is a seller protection document. Asking a buyer to waive it means absolutely nothing. It simply means they're waiving a form. It in no way releases them from their disclosure obligation. As a matter of fact, the duty to disclose is A, in the law, it's statutory, and in the contract, it's not in Section 4. It's in Section 5B. It is inexcusable. I see dozens of contracts a week, sometimes dozens a day, where they've waived the seller property disclosure statement. Those are, any listing agent puts a house on the market without one, I always say that's evidence. When they ask, I say, why do you hate your client? It's our job to make sure our clients protect themselves. The SPUDS is intended to protect the seller. It's not some no big deal document. Oh, I want a buyer to waive it because I've never lived in the property. Never lived in the property is the stupidest reason not to give a SPUDS. Because if you never lived in the property, you can actually use the SPUDS to answer a limited list of questions. In court, not having a SPUDS does not say I don't know. It says I know, but I didn't tell. That's concealed material defects. It's a disease, it's a plague, this whole no SPUDS thing. We have to get over it. It's the most important thing you can do for your seller is get a seller property disclosure statement. And if you're one of my agents, one of our agents here in my home group, talking to the camera, and you're putting property on the market without SPUDS, you're breaching your fiduciary. You're actually putting your client at risk. And if you don't deliver SPUDS, you still have to deliver about 30 pages of documents listing everything the seller knows about the property. Waiving SPUDS and disclosure have nothing to do with each other. Just SPUDS is a form. Tired of it? All right, moving on. Read the inspection paragraph. Obviously, Section 6 is a big deal now. It's always been a big deal, but since all contracts are as is, it's an even bigger deal. Make sure that you have heating, cooling inspector, mold, and pest, and pool and roof inspectors available, because most general home inspectors, they'll do their inspection, but if it's roof, AC, electrical, plumbing, anything, or pool, they're going to say, get out another inspector, get someone of the trade to come out. That's why getting inspections done early in the game is so important. 4, confirm your ability to obtain insurance and insurability of the property during the inspection period with your insurance agent. This is like a really big deal that no one makes a big deal out of. First of all, I love saying this, Jerome knows what's coming. Jermaine knows what's coming. If you're using the word clue, C-L-U-E, in 2018, all it means is that you're clueless. The contract took clue out 7 years ago in 2011. I don't even know where newer agents came up with that word. Clue is Kleenex. Clue is to insurance claim history what Kleenex is to tissue. It's one format. It used to be required by the contract, but it was a total pain. All they need to do is get a hold of their insurance agent, say, pull my claim history. I can tell you how long that takes. Put your name in, push claim history, and send you an email. But it's imperative that we fight for that on behalf of our buyers. Again, if you waive insurance claim history for any other reason than the property's not insured, or it's a REO or one of these funky deals, that's evidence that you hate your client. And having the buyer waive insurance claim history on behalf of the seller, not delivering one. If there's insurance on the property, there is no reason, period, not to deliver an insurance claim history. Failure to deliver one is just plain stupid. And if you encourage a client or allow a client to put a property on the market without insurance claim history and the SPUDS, without really twisting their arm to try and get them to do the right thing to protect themselves and letting them know that not doing it is really dumb, and you try to protect them from their stupidity, but they chose to be stupid, you didn't do your job till you've gone that far. Insurance claim history is a big deal because you get it to the insurance agent within this, and your insurance agent takes that and gets you an underwritten quote, not a binder quote. You can get insurance in 5 minutes on any house, but it's based on square footage, type of roof, age, and zip code. And at the bottom it says subject to change, or my personal favorite, cancellation. That's right, people move into a house and then they go, the insurance company runs the claim history and they cancel the people's insurance. It happens. But more often than that, you're paying $900 a year, and after they re-rate it, all of a sudden you're paying $1,700 a year. Well, for me, an extra $50, $60 a month, that's a lot of money to have to pay that I didn't know I was paying. And that goes back on the seller, because if they have insurance, there's zero reason to not deliver insurance claim history. If they're uninsured, that needs to be disclosed, and then your buyer really needs to get a hold of an insurance company, because sometimes having an uninsured property makes the next insurance more expensive, or even worse, they can't get it. And there are some uninsurable properties out there. That should scare you. I don't know about you guys, but I don't want to live in one. All right, line 5, section 5 here. That's what I just write idiot across that, because that says the buyer hasn't applied for their loan yet. And if you're showing property and writing contracts for buyers that haven't gotten their loan yet, what are you? An idiot. What's your buyer? An idiot. Yeah. Read the title commitment within 5 days of receipt. Remember, this is the backdoor clause. One of the reasons why you want to encourage things to get on the table quick, because if they get the title commitment on day 15, they have until day 20 to approve or disapprove and cancel. It's an absolute unilateral right to cancel. All they have to say is, I don't like the title report. They can literally disapprove, you know, Schedule B, even when Schedule B is completely clean. Read the CC&Rs and other government documents, especially regarding HOAs. If you're a listing agent, title companies are pretty cool now. They will give you, most title companies will give you the full CC&R HOA package and a nice binder to leave at the property so you can deliver it to buyers up front. This is an absolute backdoor. A lot of buyers are getting CC&Rs and HOA docs 2, 3, 4 days before closing. They can literally look at that and go no and walk away. You got a buyer with cold feet, that's a backdoor. And contrary to what everyone thinks, delivery of CC&Rs and HOA is a seller responsibility. That's seller disclosure. Title companies take that responsibility for us, thank goodness, because they're the one that usually pulls them things out for us. But when you get right to pure law and responsibility, it's the seller's duty to disclose anything material. That would mean CC&Rs and HOA stuff is a seller disclosure obligation. Thank you to the title industry for taking care of it for us, but that's on the seller. And the seller really has it in their best interest. Get that stuff on the table early. Get that contingency removed. Because what we're talking about here is an absolute backdoor. They can look at those CC&Rs, HOA docs and go, nope, I don't like it. They can have cold feet. They can be completely loan approved. I've seen people walk away for CC&Rs 2 days before closing. And they had every reason to do it, and shame on the seller and a listing agent for not getting it to them.
So ask title,
Yeah.
they can pull CC&Rs before they close.
They'll get you the full package we put on the market, yeah. And you can just deliver it to buyer for, you can email it to the listing agent for buyer for signature, or just deliver it and have them sign off on it. They'll even give you an acknowledgement page.
So a full HOA packet or CC&Rs or that?
The whole damn thing. They go together. And here's what happened 3 days prior to tell you why this is such a big deal. And it's completely legit, and you have to feel bad for the buyer because they really were wanting to move into their house. You know, as soon as the buyer gets one of these things signed, it's their house, you know? Anything goes wrong means they don't get their house. In this case, they owned a commercial business. They had 2 trucks. They both drove wrapped trucks. You can't have commercially identifiable vehicles parked in your driveway in many, many HOAs now, which I consider completely stupid. I know people that got wraps for real estate, and they have to park in their garage, or they couldn't have their wrap in the neighborhood. But both of them had pipe racks. Won't fit in the garage. They couldn't cut the pipe to them. They need them for business. So they're like, well, someone should have told me this. I'm out of here. Guess what? They were right. Someone should have told them that. And that someone, unfortunately, is the seller. All right. And conduct a pre-closing walkthrough because you're crazy if you don't. Let's talk about the purchase contract. Residential real estate purchase contract. See all the little fine print boilerplate at the top, all fancy and italicized? You don't necessarily have to read that out loud, but make sure you have a conversation with every buyer that says, I'm not an accountant, I'm not an attorney, I'm not an insurance guy, I'm not a home inspector. Do not ask for me for advice in those areas. I'm not legally allowed to give it. All right, line 1. Now, when I get to problem areas of the contract, I'll always say this is a problem area, okay? Line 1 is a problem area. You would think line 1 would be the one part of the contract that's a no-brainer because it's where you put your buyer's name. That should be pretty simple. Now, for the purposes of my classes, my buyers are always the Flintstones. Fred Flintstone and Wilma Flintstone. Don't shortcut. Don't, on zip forms, don't put both their names in one. It's got a place for buyer 1 and buyer 2. Split it up. Put them in there. Everyone gets a last name. I saw one the other day, Mr. and Mrs., you know, Fred Flintstone. No, it's Fred Flintstone and Wilma Flintstone. Ask them how they want their legal name. Title is going to create this kind of important document called a deed, which is what makes them own the property based on that name on line 1. Okay? Now, my name is John Dyer, John R. Dyer everywhere, but real estate transactions, I use my full name, John Robert Dyer, because there's a John R. Dyer out there that's got all sorts of problems. If you didn't ask me that, and you know me, you're just going to write John R. Dyer. It needs to be John Robert. You talk about, anybody ever sign with your whole middle name? It's the weirdest feeling ever. I literally have to stop myself and remind myself, dude, it ain't R today, it's Robert. Spell it out. If they use your middle initial, middle initial. If they don't, don't. And here's what you say. What do you want for your legal name? And how are you going to sign your name on page 10? And if you're signing your name different, let's make sure they match. And they go, why? I go, because, you know, I've seen people where they have initials, you know, J.R. Dyer on one, and they sign the name on the back. Well, which is which? Which is correct? What does title company go with? So this is a very important question. And this is the silly part that goes with that one. But it matters. Ask people how to spell their name and make no assumptions. There's some freaky names out there now. As a matter of fact, my home group has seems to have gone on this recruiting thing. I was asking a couple months ago. It's like, are we just out recruiting people with weird spelled names? Because I'll look at a contract, I'll go, wow. It's you know, I've seen Johnson spelled Jonshahn. That's Johnson. But you know what? Ask. Because if you ask me how to spell Johnson, I'm going with Johnsson because I've never known anyone that spelled it different. Especially people with ethnic names. I'm not being at all discriminatory here, but there's a lot of people from other parts of the world and they don't necessarily spell as phonetic as we do. You may have, you know, in Eastern Europe, witch and vitch. There's a lot of people that end in witch and vitch. There are like 6 different ways to spell that depending on where you're from. So there's V-I-C-C, there's V-I-C-H, there's just V-I-C. I think there's V-I-Z-C. So you really have to ask people. And there's nothing more embarrassing, and I see them all the time, to have to do an addendum correcting your buyer's spelling because you forgot to ask them how to spell their name and get it right. Yeah, I don't discriminate against anyone, but I think when you move from Eastern Europe, you should definitely be required to have one vowel for every 6 consonants. And C, Z, W, and X cannot go together without a vowel in there somewhere. And you know, and then you've got some parts of the world now where the names are 16 syllables. They almost won't fit, but you better get it right, because I can tell you, 2 years ago, I went through, another broker called me and said, we have a problem. Is it really this bad? And they had the deed in completely the wrong name, and they had to go to court and get the judge to fix it. Somehow or another got all the way through closing, and it was a foreign name and definitely an odd spelled name, but it was wrong. And they went to sell their house, and actually took them a couple of days to fix that so they could sell their house. They had to do a corrective deed, and they wouldn't record it, so they had to get a judge to sign off on it. What a pain. Also, not all buyers are people, but all buyers are persons. What do I mean by that? When I think of people, I think of breathing, walking, talking, you know. I'm assuming we're all people, although, you know, the aliens are on the planet, so you never know. You may be hiding among us. But we are natural persons. We have a pulse. Not all persons have a pulse. A limited liability corporation, LLC, is a legal person. A corporation is a legal person. A trust is a legal person. A church is a legal person. If you're dealing with something like that, and I'll start with trust because that's an LLC, because those are the most common, you need to spell out the LLC, and you need to designate the authority to sign on behalf. Let's talk about, let's say it's a Flintstone Family LLC. Flintstone Investment LLC, period. That's the name. You would put Flintstone Investment LLC, and then parentheses, Fred Flintstone Managing Member. That means Fred has the right to sign, because you can't sign the name of an LLC. It has to be signed by a person on behalf of the LLC. And I see signatures that have the LLC as a signature. That's not acceptable. It requires a signature of a managing member, or a corporation, in the case of a corporation, an officer. In the case of a trust, the trustee. And just because I'm a trustee for a trust does not mean I have the legal authority to buy real property for that trust. It may or it may not. So always ask people if they're an LLC, corporation, or trust, do you have the legal authority to bind this organization? Because if they don't and they put up earnest money, they're going to follow this client of mine who was a family trust. She thought everything was cool, got in a fight with her siblings, and they wouldn't close. She lost $10,000 earnest money because literally she did not have the authority. It required 2 signatures. I've been involved in investment LLCs, always required 2 signatures because I didn't want someone going out and buying on behalf of us, and they didn't want me to do it. Make sure they have the authority. And make sure you spell the name. It's really embarrassing. I got to do an addendum because I misspelled your name. That's just sad. Seller. Seller's name. If it's your listing and you know the seller, you know the spelling, you know everything's right, you might want to put that in. Otherwise, always check as identified in Section 9C. Because you're typically getting that information from where? Tax records. Let me be just blunt. Tax records are not necessarily that accurate at any given time. They have stuff wrong. There are situations where people are doing flips or different names, and so don't go with that. Go with as identified in 9C, and I'm the listing agent. Make that my problem because those are my clients. All right. Buyer agrees to buy and seller agrees to sell the real property with all improvements, fixtures, and appurtenance thereon or incidental thereto, plus the personal property described herein, collectively known as the premises. I just love it anytime we get to say the word appurtenance. Is that weird? It makes me feel important. It's my favorite real estate word. Premises address. Do you need one for a legally binding contract, state of Arizona? Yes, no, or maybe?
Yes.
No. Do you want to have one? Yes. Make sure it's correct. And people make mistakes in MLS. Sometimes they make serious mistakes. Typing in an address wrong is unfortunate, but there's not a person in this room that's not fully capable of making that mistake and never seeing it because you're moving on. There's properties in MLS where it's 4114 and its MLS is 4141. I use those numbers because I did that. I got a contract with the wrong address and we had to fix it. I have keyboard dyslexia, was on a cul-de-sac. People drove right to the house. No one even noticed because there's my sign in the yard. It's the only house in the cul-de-sac, but literally got in escrow. Verify all that information because here's the bad news, and simple as this. MLS is BS. You have to assume everything in there is wrong because if I represent a buyer and Jermaine represents a seller and he puts messed up information in MLS and I take that information and communicate it to my buyer or put it on a document on behalf of my buyer, that's got nothing to do with his mistake. That's my mistake because I am responsible to disseminate and vet every bit of information that comes from the other party to the buyer, including through MLS. Is MLS mostly accurate? Yeah. But is it wrong sometimes? Yeah. Can that wrong hurt your buyer? Absolutely. So you're responsible to verify every little bit of information. And remember, at the bottom of MLS, it says all information here deemed but not guaranteed accurate, reliable, subject to change without notice, which means, and subject to change without notice and independent verification by buyers or whoever else. That's on us. Premises address you need, assessor number, do you need one? Legally, no. Technically, title companies want you to put an assessor number on. There's nothing but laziness if you don't, but then again, don't just assume that the assessor number in MLS is correct. Go check it out. And if you're concerned about the tax records even, go to the plat and check it out yourself and find it on the map. But make sure it's accurate. But title companies, that's literally, for lack of a better term, that's the account number for the house. That's what they use for everything. And so it's kind of important. But you don't have to have one. Book, map, and parcel. City. Do you need a city for a binding contract, state of Arizona? Nah. Should you put one down? Yes. Especially if you're in one of those areas where you're not sure what city you're in. As I point over there. The county, Scottsdale, Cave Creek, Phoenix. I have no idea which is which. And I'm pretty certain that sometimes they actually got them backwards. Because I'm pretty sure I drove through county into Phoenix and back to Scottsdale, and it's not supposed to work that way. And I found out later I was in Cave Creek the whole time. So Make sure you get it right, and again, don't assume it's correct in MLS. Do you need accounting? That's the one that gets a definite maybe. Because all of this, purchasing a property and deed recordation is done, it's about recordation, and that's done on a county basis. And the reason why you might want to put the county, because we ran out of uses of the word rancho, montaña, verde, villa, paradise, we're running out of names for subdivisions. You can only have Vista Verde, Montaña, Ranchos in so many different combinations. Pinal County and Pima County may have properties with exactly the same legal description. And that's what it comes down to. You must have a legal description for a binding contract. I have gotten people out of contracts because the buyer's agent was too damn lazy to put a legal description. It's inexcusable, it's unacceptable. If it's a long meets and bounds, we actually added some lines because it was only 84 characters. Sometimes it won't fit even on 7, 8, 9. If so, see attached, print the legal description from the deed off maricopa.gov and make it Exhibit A or Attachment A. Simple as that, and have signature lines on it. But you cannot have a contract without a legal description.
And don't get it off monsoon.
Pardon me?
Don't get the legal description off monsoon.
Well, some of them, the long ones, monsoon ends. You'd actually, I've seen legal descriptions that are a paragraph and a half long. There's not room in monsoons. You get the southwest corner, southeast corner, and stops. There's a lot more to it. That is always part of the deed. So if you've got a long, confusing one, that's the place to go for it. TBD is not a legal description. It's TBD. It ain't even a real word, okay? All that means is I was too lazy to type in the legal description. And by the way, if you're using MLS Connect, a lot of that stuff should fill itself in for you. In escrow is not a legal description. I'm not even sure what the hell that means. I keep looking for escrow. People say, why are you looking for escrow? Because there's a legal description in there and I want to find it. Okay, all that means for an agent is if you don't put the legal description in, it means you're a bad agent and you're lazy because you're putting your client at risk of having the contract pulled out from underneath them because it's missing one of the essential elements of a contract. You have a fiduciary duty to do perfect paperwork. That also means complete and accurate paperwork. All right, any questions? What time is it?
8 or 50.
What?
3:56.
Cool. We're going to get farther than I thought. Line 10, purchase price. Good. I hope you guys get as big of a kick out of this as I did. I saw it a few years ago and I've never seen it again till recently. Okay. 450K is not a number. It's a valley girl asking a question. 450K, I literally saw someone put 400, I think it was 4, I don't know what it was, but they literally said 1,000, put K. They may be from the tech world, but seriously, 450, comma, 000, don't do that. Although, when I'm reviewing documents, I need a good giggle now and then, and that one will give me a laugh every time. So, write it out. We're going to keep the math simple. We're going to go with $200,000 purchase price. You don't have to put 0.00 for cents, but you can if you want. Some people are that purist. Next, we have earnest money. Two sides to earnest money. One, if you're representing a buyer, obviously you want to put the minimum amount of money at risk. But you also need to understand in this market, there's a good chance you're coming up against multiple offers. And earnest money is intended to be skin in the game and ready for this, fair liquidated damages in the event they don't close. People say, what's the big deal with earnest money? Why should an agent argue with me, seller should never get earnest money. I'm like, really? Seller takes his house off the market. The market goes down in value. Seller's supposed to eat that because the buyer didn't perform. Buyer cancels 3 days before close of escrow by loan denial. The seller's already ordered a moving van and they put a deposit down. They don't have to pay for the van, but they don't get their deposit back. Having your house off the market is risky. Certain time, like if you have your house off the market in June, that's going to hurt because June is the hot month. July slows down a little. July 4th kind of peters and it kicks back in August. So It's a bit, if you took someone's house off the market during June, they're literally damaged. If you represent a seller, fight for big earnest money. My opinion, 2 to 3% minimum. Okay, so if 200 grand, a seller should fight for $4,000 or $5,000. It's only fair. The buyer's putting more than 5 grand down. Well, also they're proving they have the money. And if you're representing a seller, always counter. Earnest money, excuse me. Section 7A cure period shall not apply to deposit of earnest money. Buyer deposit earnest money by 5 o'clock the next business day, or shall be in material breach and subject to immediate cancellation by the seller. Because if you don't do that, earnest money is subject to cure period, which means the seller would have to give them a cure, and then they got 3, which is really 4 more days to get that in. Now, if it's a VA deal, it's the exception to the 13, 12, 11, 10 rule. The 13, 12, 11, 10 rule means line 13, line 12, and line 11 must always add up to line 10, with the exception of VA or 100% financing. And then would be earnest money. After earnest money, you would put to be applied towards the buyer's cost or refunded at closing. Other than that, earnest money is part of the down payment. Some people like to type in to be applied towards buyer's down payment. It's not necessary, but if you're one of those people, there's nothing wrong with that. So we're going to do 5,000 earnest money, 200 purchase, 5,000 earnest money. We'll do 20% down, so the balance of our down payment, per my calculation, would be $35,000 on line 12. Just put additional down payment. The contract clarifies how that's supposed to come in, all that. Don't overwrite things, because if you write something that comes in conflict with the contract, the printed stuff, your words will prevail. If you write something that happens to come in legal conflict or technical conflict, like you write a loan amount of 200 grand here and somewhere else you write a loan amount of 180, which one prevails? You have a voidable contract. So simply put additional down payment. You don't have to put on it before COE, that's all built into the contract. And that would leave line 13 with a loan amount, to my calculation, of $160,000. John Dyer's rule of contract anything. Minimum keystrokes, maximum specificity. Keep it simple, keep it clean. That'd be $160,000 by new loan. Parentheses, see page 2/prequal. That's where they get all that information. Do not write, buy new conventional loan, 20% down with XYZ lender at 4.72 interest. I've seen people write out the whole damn loan program. What's the problem with that? Anything changes, it's part of the meaning of the contract. You have to amend the contract. And never, ever put information on the lender on there. There's lenders in town that says, yeah, put $160,000 by new loan from XYZ mortgage. All they're asking for is free advertising on the front page. The prequel has their information. Defer to page 2 in the prequel, because that's what it's for. Now, those must add up. I recently saw a house, it was $200,000. It was 20% down. They had $200,000, they had down payment earnest money, added to $400,000, and then they had a loan amount of $200,000, which means 13, 12, and 11 added up to $240,000, and line 10 was $200,000. Which one's correct? Are they borrowing $200,000 and putting 20% $40,000 down? Or are they buying for $200,000 and putting 20% down? Which completely voidable contract. And the agent from another company wasn't stupid. It just slipped through the cracks. Which is why, check your math. You're absolutely responsible. It doesn't, the deal was saved, but how embarrassing to have to go to your client and say, I kind of screwed up adding numbers and I just sold you a house for $240,000, you thought you were buying for $200,000. We need to fix that. And it's an innocent mistake, but it's an innocent mistake with massive consequences. Because what if the seller has a backup offer for 10 grand more? You create that addendum, the seller's going to say, no, I'm not going to sign the addendum. And by the way, we have a mathematically impossible to close contract, so I think I'm going to cancel. Deal's dead, seller gets that house, the seller sells to someone else, and that buyer hates you. And you probably don't deserve their love because your math cost them their house. People say, John, that stuff never happens. Oh yeah, it does. Every stinking day. You'd be amazed at things that happen. As a matter of fact, I want to do a class that's nothing but laughs. I want to do the 100 funniest things that I've seen in real estate, and 100 funniest and 100 stupidest things I've ever seen. And when I go through the funniest, I guarantee everyone in the room will laugh because I've seen some funny stuff. When I go through the stupidest, everyone in the room will go. And they're by there going, no one really did that. That portion of the class will take 4 hours. The funniest stuff will only take 15 minutes. Yeah. All right. In section 1C, the only other thing that would go in there would be any other financing. Say you're getting 2 loans. Obviously, then line 14 would be the other loan. I also like if you have a real estate license, your client has a real estate license. That's like rule number 1, must be disclosed. I like to put right on page 1 on line 16. Buyer's a licensed real estate agent in Arizona. If the seller's a licensed agent, save them the pain in the ass of having to counter and put right on there, seller's a licensed real estate agent in Arizona. If you don't want to put it there, make sure it's in section 8. Because if I'm an owner agent and you know I'm an owner, you know I'm an owner agent, don't make me do a counter offer with 1 disclosure that I'm an owner agent. But whatever you do not let properties go into escrow where any party has a real estate license without that being disclosed. That is a deal killer and a lawsuit and in trouble with the Department of Real Estate. Which is why it's 2018. Ask all your clients, do you have a real estate license? You'd be surprised how many people have a license and almost forgot. They just keep it, they can take the renewal every 2 years, but they never actually use it.
That was my question.
What's that?
It's not in this state.
Not relevant. Then have to be disclosed. If I bought real estate, no.
In California.
But if I bought real estate in California, I would disclose. And if I sold real estate to a California agent, I would go ahead and disclose anyway. Can't hurt.
Are you stopping at 4?
No, 4:30.
Alright.
Throw a monkey wrench at you again? Alright. Earnest money in the form of personal check, wire transfer, other. The other would be cashier's check. The one way to make sure your buyer never gets burned by this wire fraud thing, have them get their earnest money by a cashier's check. Typically, it's wire transfer. If you check wire transfer, that's prima facie evidence that you do not have the earnest money in your possession, which is good. Because I don't know about you guys, I don't carry around a wire transfer device, do you? Although Venmo is the coolest thing for sending money, I've learned. It's a millennial thing. You guys got Venmo? Push 1 button, my phone. I have kids. So push 1 button, the money goes to the kids. It's funny. I've never gotten money from Venmo.
Only goes out.
One day. It'll be the other way around. Okay, and upon acceptance, one of the most common mistakes is people check 17, but they forget to check escrow company on line 18. It's obviously it's not the end of the world, but it will get your document kicked by the broker, and you're going to have to go back and fix it by having an initial on here, or checked on here and initialed, or do an addendum stating that. Just make sure you fill in all the blanks and check all the boxes. And I hate to say this, but I always do. If you get a document rejected by your broker, that's not a reason to be annoyed. That's a reason to be embarrassed, because it means you screwed up and potentially put your client at risk. Every T crossed, I dotted, box checked, initial put carries liability and risk, especially if it's not done. Okay? Leaves a vulnerability. Perfect paperwork. All right, close of escrow. I am going to just paraphrase that. Buyer must have all funds necessary in the close before close of escrow, period. Okay? Close of escrow and closing. Actually, closing and closing are 2 different things. Same word. Make sure your buyers understand the difference between closing, going to the closing, and close of escrow. It ain't over till the gravitationally enhanced female performs her final aria. The fat lady sings at the recorder's office. Buyers think, I went to closing. We call it closing, right? They sign their life away, they give their check. I went to closing. Can I get my keys? No, it's not your house yet. So they need to understand that it is not their house until recordation. And I've seen 2 deals fall through after funding.
Wow.
3 letters caused in both cases. Actually, we had another one. I remember we had one from one of our agents here recently. This goes a while back. IRS. IRS zapped them. Lender sent the funds. That came up on, got red flagged. They're like, no, don't close. Give us the money back. So literally, also had a house burned down as it was funding. That was a fun one. That was back when that happened. That was a high-end deal. That one hurt because the house burned down. Didn't get paid. All right.
Get burned on that one.
Just make sure your buyer understands. Make sure your buyer understands they need to have all funds. And even on cash deals, they need to get the funds in the day before. Okay. Also, make sure your sellers understand, because I'm tired of having this argument. Day of closing belongs to the buyer. If they close at 4, what time? It's like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, right? If we were recording right now and I was buying a house, that house was mine as of retroactive to 12:01 a.m. The day of closing in prorations is paid for by who? The buyer. Sellers need to understand. They need to get out. They need to be moved out the day before. We have another little rash. See, I told you problems come in waves. We have a wave of sellers. Well, I know record. I'll be out in a few hours. Or, I couldn't get the truck in time. We're not going to be out till tomorrow. Unacceptable. And I have listing agents defend that. Oh, what's the big deal? It was their house until this morning. No, it was their house until midnight last night. So make sure your sellers get the hell out. So, because those are the profanity-laden phone calls I get. People tend to curse when they got a moving van at $1,500 a day, sitting in front of a house waiting for the seller to sweep the floor. And I wouldn't cover this another day, but there's this myth out there that a seller's required to deliver a house broom swept. Seller has no obligation to deliver a house clean. Seller must deliver the house in substantially the same, per Section 5A, substantially the same condition when it bought. And if they were grungy, dirty people living there, then they absolutely have every right to deliver the house. No more grungy and dirty, but equally as grungy and dirty. Do I advise my sellers to have a cleaning service come to buyers, and will I often pay for that? Yes, because I don't want those bitchy little phone calls. But the seller is not required to do anything other than deliver in substantially the same condition, but they must remove all debris. So you don't got to clean it real good, but you do have to get your crap out of here. Well, it's just garbage. It's very clearly states debris. If it's good, this is how stupid people get. Obviously, in my opinion, if it's in the garbage can, it's been cleaned up. We literally had buyers refusing to close because the garbage cans were full. And the garbage didn't come for 2 days. They said, well, where are we going to put our garbage? And their agent, this was an agent, literally raising holy hell over this. I may not have called them stupid directly, but I certainly called them stupid behind their back. And I'll tell you right now, here today, of whoever they are, I don't remember who they were, but that's just stupid. Okay? There's a certain amount of reasonableness and accommodation. And based on what I heard about this house and the sellers, they were damn lucky they did anything. You sound like the kind of sellers that would have left the house completely in disarray, which you know who pays for that. So, you've heard of hush money? That's shut up money. It's all right, here's $200, clean the place so the damn agent and buyer will shut up. Yeah. All right. If this is an all cash sale, we're going to get this. When we get to top of section 2, okay, line 68 says, if it's an all cash sale, go to section 3. Remember, your buyers need to understand, all cash sales do not have a contingency upon financing, even if they're financing with a letter of credit, hard money, whatever. They have to attach a proof of funds, but even if they're getting a loan, hard money does not have a contingency on qualifying, nor does it have a contingency upon appraisal. And I recommend cash buyers get a contingency upon appraisal built in. You have to write it in section 8. But they need to understand, if they don't do that, they would have to get it done during the inspection period, and then they could cancel if it didn't appraise, because obviously it didn't meet my financial needs as reason to cancel. Once you get past that, make sure your cash buyers know. And if you deliver a Schwab statement, E whatever it is, E-Finance or one of those, please black out the account numbers. I see more full, the ones that have XXXXX and then they have 2478 or whatever. Okay, that's intended to protect the people. Full account numbers. Come on, the whole 3 different accounts. Their full account number. One of them I've even seen had the Social Security number on it. We don't want that, and I don't know who you work for. Your broker does not want that in his server. We do not want that kind of information in our world. I don't want people to have access to it. I will tell you though, I don't get excited very easily, but I did a few weeks ago, a couple weeks, 3 weeks ago, see the most impressive proof of funds I've ever seen. They're buying a $200,000 house in the 200s. The proof of funds was $84 million.
No way.
I'm like, all right, they're probably going to close this one. That's like a dollar bill out of my wallet. Yeah, it's crazy.
Wow.
It was a large real estate investment firm. As a matter of fact, I think I see their name every other week. They buy a lot of houses. But that'll get your attention. You start counting all those zeros. I can be honest with you, that wasn't my proof of funds. my proof of funds comes with 4 question marks, not 4 zeros. All right. All right, I jumped back to, okay, good. Okay, go on. Sorry, I skipped that when I got to close of escrow. Make sure you have plenty of time. Better to have too much time and not need it than not have enough time, because extensions are not easy to get, and they shouldn't be. And if you represent a seller, there's absolutely no circumstance, in my opinion, ever, where you would give an extension without earnest money becoming non-refundable. An extension is a renegotiation. What is the definition of negotiation? In 3 simple words. Give and take. An agreement based on give and take, right? Isn't that what negotiation is? I'll give you this, okay, I'll give you that. An extension is a demand. It's a take. If you're coming to me for a take, I deserve a give. You're not asking, to say I need more time to get loan, if you don't get it earnest, if they won't give the earnest money non-refundable, they're saying I need more time to get loan denial. I need more time to waste of yours, Mr. and Mrs. Flintstone, because I don't know yet if I'm going to have my loan or not. Well, if you're that far down the road, then you have a talk, a come to Jesus talk with your lender, but there's no reason my seller should give you no more time and take additional risk. My seller's already taken her house off the market for 30 days. Fight for non-refundable earnest money. And if they all of a sudden appear with a loan denial, have an LSU that says everything's fine, question that loan denial. All right, moving on. And by the way, close of escrow, how long it takes, it ain't got nothing to do with me or you, does it? It ain't got nothing to do with buyer or seller. Who, in most cases, who really determines when it closes?
The bank.
The lender, yeah. We're at their mercy, to say the least. All right, buyer needs to understand they need to deliver all funds in a cashier's check, wired funds. Wired, remember, there's wire fraud out there. Make sure all your buyers know. No way in heck am I, John Dyer, ever going to send you an email or any communication requesting a wire transfer with a routing number. Make sure you have the conversation with your clients. People are getting stolen from every day, all over the country. It's nasty. It is mean. It is cruel. And unfortunately, they're using us. They're creating mimic emails coming from the agent. So they'll have your email, comes from you, just like every other email that they got, only it's from somebody across this ocean trying to steal their money. It's freaky scary. There's an FBI task force specifically for that. And if you have any chance you have to get a chance to read on, there's some good articles. And I believe you should have a healthy fear, certainly when it comes to, because one thing great about this business, we don't use the word crime a lot, right? We're not really involved in criminal acts. Not a lot of people stealing houses, okay? Because that's literally But this is, we're talking about actual crime, federal crime. I don't want no part of that. And I also don't want to be the guy to have to call my client or get the phone call from one of my agent's clients that their client, that they got their money stolen. That'll be the worst day in the history of this company, or in the worst day in the history of my and your career, to get that phone call. Yeah.
Quick question on the counter. If they want an extension, let's just say, would you counter back for them to give you additional earnest non-refundable, or are you just saying your earnest money that you already gave?
That depends on what they're asking for and how much earnest money there is.
Okay. So
Yeah.
they're asking for like 3 or 4 days, or
If there's $200,000 house and the seller only got 1,000 earnest money, I would ask for more. By the way, $1,000 earnest money is not earnest money. It's a joke. There's no, I can't, $50,000 condo, $1,000 earnest money is probably still too little. $250,000 house, $1,000 earnest money is a joke, and if you let your seller accept that, you're not protecting your seller's interest as a fiduciary. It should be 2 to 3%, and then fight it for it. You got a hot listing? Okay. You have a listing for $260,000 in North Phoenix, Gilbert or Chandler, Surprise, Peoria. How long is that house going to stay on the market? Yeah. But a lot of those houses, their days on the market has a decimal point in front of it. You know, it's like not days, it's hours. That price range is 2005 again. Okay? Put in MLS. All offers must have minimum 5,000 earnest money. Your seller's instructions, do not even present offers with this. Say, I'm not going to write, say, my seller's instructed me not to present the offer, because we have to present all offers unless we have written instructions otherwise. Fight friggin' earnest money. And you'd be amazed how many buyers should lose their earnest money, but listing agents don't know what they're doing, so they actually let them get it back even when they shouldn't. Or unscrupulous title companies give it back when they shouldn't because they get lots of business from those people. That upsets me. All right, buyer understands. Failure to have down payment does not constitute loan denial. Had a client from another company. I feel bad for these people. Got down to closing. They were waiting for money from their 401k. It was in process. They didn't apply for it soon enough, and never make the assumption, if you work for a large corporation, that the money in your 401k, IRA, whatever system they're using is yours. It's yours when they decide to give it back to you. Like Intel's great. I mean, I worship Intel. They're one of the greatest things that ever happened in Maricopa County, without question. But people who have their retirement plan, it takes them 4 to 6 weeks to get their money out of it. Make sure your buyer knows the rules, because these particular buyers couldn't get their money out of their retirement. They applied too late. The seller had a better offer, cured them. Not only did they not close, took their earnest money because they were fully qualified. They were just waiting for their however many thousands of dollars. And it was our seller got the earnest money, but I still feel really bad for that buyer. And because, you know, when you have money in your account, you think it's my money. You don't realize that sometimes you gotta suck up and kiss some things to get it back. All right. How are we doing time wise? It's like 4:25.
422.
Nice, coach. All funds to be in U.S. currency. Now, I've been making a big deal out of this lately for a couple of reasons. One, most people do not understand the concept of currency exchange. People are wondering, I'll use a very good example, why, we get bought up by Canadians forever, right? When's the last time one of you heard of a Canadian buying something here? They're not. Exchange rate. They buy a $100,000 house, it costs them $107,000 because the dollar is super strong against Canadian dollar. So that's an issue. But if you have someone coming from elsewhere and their source of funds is foreign money, make sure they have a reputable exchange facilitator, except for Canada. You know where Canadians go for an exchange facilitator? A bank. Okay, but if you're coming from Asia, China, Japan, India, one of those countries, they need to have an exchange facilitator that they can trust, because they need to have that money in U.S. currency. And my advice is they should have it in country, converted within the inspection period. Why do I say that? Because if they can't pull that off and there's any problems with that conversion, they can bail. I had an investor from England, I think it was England or France, Europe, and he got right out to it. He didn't want to close because the exchange rate had changed dramatically, and he couldn't cancel, and he didn't want to close. He mathematically figured out that it was also actually better to lose his earnest money than to buy the house with the exchange. You talk about moving back and forth. Mm-hmm. Where you really have an issue is we're a border state. And I don't know if you guys notice this, we have a lot of people come from Mexico and they buy a lot of real estate. And some of them have their money in Mexico. And the Mexican exchange process is super easy, but it's also super risky. I love to do this because it's actually, looks stupid, but it's the truth. This here, see, this is a meter. That is the Canadian American exchange rate. What I just showed you? The last 35 years. That's the dollar against the peso. You know what that was? This morning. The peso is so volatile that your Mexican buyers, if they're using the peso from Mexico, they need a reputable exchange facilitator, and I don't know one for the peso anymore, but they need to have someone that can hit the target, because we literally have the dollar moving 15, 20, 30% against the peso sometimes in one day. How bad would it suck that you're buying for 100 grand and it ends up costing you 130 because the peso crashed? And this is this has nothing to do with America, Mexico. This is literally a fact of watching that exchange. It's terrifying. I can tell you right now, peso's weak. I got back from Mexico. Dollars went a little further. Gas there is only $5.75 a gallon. I didn't realize all Mexican gas is owned is government company. It's nationalized. Wow. I'm doing the math. Like, I just paid almost $6 for gas.
Yikes.
And on the screen, it was like $7,430 because it was pesos. Yeah, frightening. Frightening. It was still worth it. All right. So, any questions there?
No.
Well, cool. This is a great breaking point. We'll pick up with section 1E next time. Thanks for your time. Sorry for the delay, but we have these classes and sometimes people go long. I don't go long because this is the last class today. There's never anyone here. But there's lots of people out there in the internet world. Bye, everybody. We'll see you next time.